I appreciate everyone continuing to help us with our messaging on Real ID. This is a public service announcement. We have been screaming from the rooftops for a very long time that the Real ID deadline is not really a deadline. What we've seen are ridiculously long lines today, especially, and again, and at the end of last week, for folks who think that we are going to stop issuing Real IDs this Wednesday, May 7th. That is not the case. We have been saying the same thing for a very long time, but the message to those folks who are flocking to facilities today, thinking that they will not get a Real ID in 48 hours from now, that is not accurate. Again, we have been saying for months and over a year now that even after May 7th, you will still be able to get a Real ID. The Real ID deadline isn't really a deadline. You'll still be able to get a Real ID after May 7th, which is when the enforcement period theoretically will begin at airports. We don't want to discourage people from getting a Real ID, but the fact is the vast majority of people do not need a Real ID before Wednesday. I was at the Super Center earlier today. People are waiting hours and hours, and they do not have to. When we tell them that they can still come after Wednesday, they understand and they say they will come back. The other point that we want to make, because there is amongst this chaos, fear, confusion, that for the foreseeable future, forever, your regular driver's license you can still use it to drive a vehicle, and your state ID can still be used as a valid form of identification. You do not need a Real ID after Wednesday to drive a vehicle or identify yourself. We could not be more clear on this. So to those of you who are waiting in lines for a very long time, please, please, please know that we will be issuing Real IDs for the foreseeable future, probably forever. What we've seen in these lines today are folks that are bringing their kids, even though their kids don't need them. They're concerned that they won't be able to get on a plane. Homeland Security has let us know that even after May 7th, there will be essentially a 2-year enforcement period where they're not going to not let people onto an airplane. So please make sure you need a Real ID. Please help us get the message out that they can get one after May 7th. Any questions?
Hi, Secretary, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Marnie Pike with the Daily Herald. Thanks for holding this. So two questions. Can you just are you seeing lines at every Secretary of State facility in the region? Can you just talk about that a bit? And what is the typical wait time for someone who applies for a Real ID to get it in the mail?
Great question. I'll answer them in reverse order. What we are telling folks is 2 to 3 weeks is what it normally takes. I will tell you, I am very proud of our team. Most people, anecdotally and based on data, get it within 7 days. However, we want people to be prepared to wait about 2 weeks. That's the other point. Marnie, you bring up a very good point. The amount of people who have a flight on Friday or Saturday who think they're going to have their Real ID. You don't walk out with a Real ID. You walk out with a piece of paper that does not qualify as a Real ID. We made this announcement a few weeks ago at a press conference. We've been saying it on our social media channels that there is a period with which, even after you leave the facility, you will not walk out with a Real ID. To answer your first question, there are lines at most of our facilities. We have not checked in with everyone because so much of our efforts today have been at our Super Center. The line is like nothing we have ever seen in the state of Illinois. I can tell you right now at the flagship right downstairs, there are also lines. The other point that we really want to make, Marnie, which is important, the folks that are waiting in line and gobbling up appointments for a Real ID that they don't need before Wednesday are also making it difficult for folks who just need to access Secretary of State services for a renewal, for other services from our office. So that part's been very frustrating to Illinoisans, to our staff, and to everyone involved.
Hi, Secretary of State. This is Addison Wright with Chicago Tribune. I had another question, if that's all right.
Yes, and so this is all Addison. Of course, if there's a question that I can't answer, I may have Scott or Hannah chime in. But yes, fire away.
Okay, perfect. I've just seen some criticism, I guess, going up to the deadline, that it's like disorganized or it's a rush. And so I just wanted to ask, like, do you think you marketed the message effectively?
I could not be more upset and offended by that statement, and I will tell you why. Because 2 years ago, we talked about this issue. 1 year ago, we announced our Real ID awareness campaign around the state. So not only have we announced it a year ago, 2 years ago, not only have folks had essentially a decade to get this done, but for folks to say now that it's unorganized when we have gone out of our way to be as proactive as possible. We opened the first Real ID Supercenter in America in downtown Chicago, which now processes roughly 1,600 Real IDs on a daily basis. We're the first state to do this, to get in front of it. We've added 2,500 daily appointments to our busiest DMVs. We developed a website portal that requires people to navigate through this checklist. We've launched Real ID Saturdays, opening 12 facilities on Saturdays for walk-ins and expending hours at 10 other appointment facilities. We've kicked off an ethnic outreach campaign geared toward immigrant communities. So we've been doing this for months and months. And while we don't compare ourselves to other states, the truth of the matter is this is a federal deadline. This is a national issue. So in Florida, where they're sleeping in their cars and sleeping in tents, in North Carolina, when you can't even get in, I would say that I could not be more upset when I hear something like that. Which again, people have had over a decade to do this. Our staff has worked so hard. Illinois taxpayers are being forced to pay overtime. So there's really not much else we could do. I guess I could like light myself on fire 6 months ago or a year ago and talk about getting it done. But outside of lighting myself on fire, we've literally had over a dozen press conferences on Real ID. We literally created a whole website for something that, by the way, is a federal mandate. It's not the state of Illinois. It's not the Secretary of State's. We're not the one that are requiring these documents that many are finding onerous. So for folks to blame our staff when they've done nothing but work extraordinarily hard, like I could not have ever fathomed, is deeply upsetting.
Thank you for answering that.
Hey, Secretary, it's Michael Calhoun from KMOX in St. Louis. Just wondering, wait lines in Metro East St. Clair County, and what kind of additional resources have been put into the St. Louis area?
I can get back to you on those specific numbers. I know folks are asking about specific facilities. I'm happy to get back to you. I will tell you that we have all hands on deck. So the people who might send me a nice email with hourly updates, a lot of them are literally taking photographs right now. We're doing everything we can, or working the lines to let people know they don't need a Real ID. So if it takes us a little while to get back to you, it's literally all hands on deck.
All right. And then the other quick question is, you mentioned the 2-year phase-in. You know, people for 20 years have been getting used to the feds saying it's coming, but maybe not. Maybe we'll delay it. Okay, we're going to delay it. So this 2-year phase-in, does that mean that people can think, I don't need to get it. I've got a flight. I'll be fine. They'll let me through.
Great question. Honestly, probably. I don't know if you guys saw the skit at Saturday Night Live where they talked about a Real ID. No one seems to really take it. Not no one. There are a lot of people who don't take it seriously, who figure, we'll make it happen at the airport. We'll figure it out. And I will say Homeland Security has not done a great job of having a uniform process on this issue. Again, That being said, people have had, over a decade to get their real ID. So to not have this information, for us to have to do this almost emergency PSA press conference Zoom is upsetting, but our job is to do everything we can to bring awareness, even if it's for something that has nothing to do with our office, like the Real ID. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Secretary. I'm Eunice Albasan with WTTW News. I wanted to ask the latest that you have as far as the percent of Illinois residents who currently have a real ID.
We can get that to you, Eunice, but when I say we're literally getting as many people in and out the doors, it's very difficult for us to tell. We are in almost emergency mode, but my hope is that by the end of the week, we'll hopefully have a better snapshot. But again, the people that are doing these data searches and doing these numbers, most of them are in facilities right now or working the lines, telling people that they probably do not have to get a real ID before Wednesday.
Hi, Secretary. It's Carrie Shepard at Axios. How are you?
Hey, how are you?
Very well. Just going back to what you said about how, the feds maybe haven't been great at this rollout, is that something you and your counterparts in other states have shared with the federal government, with the TSA, with Homeland Security, that maybe their messaging has been a little bit off in the last couple of years?
Yes. I mean, it has. Uh, you know, a real ID was not our idea. It was never my idea. My job as Secretary of State is to implement the law. But I will tell you, it's been very frustrating, and I'll tell you why it's been particularly frustrating. Not that people want to hear my problems, but we have spent 2 years modernizing the system, 2 years eliminating wait times, 2 years moving to an appointment-only system, 2 years with a better website, 2 years of skip the line and allowing more services to be done online. So to see these lines right outside our door here, it is probably the most frustrating thing I've ever seen in public life, because it does not have to be this way. Again, people have had over a decade to get this done. So to see these lines is really frustrating, especially because so many people do not need it. I will also say, speaking of the federal government, and this is based on data and anecdotally, the amount of people who are coming because they're worried about being deported or not being American citizens, that fear factor is real. We see it in people's faces. When we say, do you have a passport? And they say yes. And we say, okay, you don't need to wait in this 2-3 hour line. Hey, it's okay, I want to get my real ID. And they bring their kids so that their kids have a real ID. Even though we say if you're under 18, you don't even need one, there is a fear factor that is very real. And they feel that if they have a real ID, they don't have a real ID, that they are not really citizens, or that they don't have a form of identification, or that they will be kicked out of America. That fear coming out of Washington, D.C. is very real. And we can see it, again, anecdotally by the folks that are waiting in line and the conversations we're having with them. We can see it in the data. So that part has been deeply troubling.
Secretary, it's Marnie Pike again. Can you, what if you're somebody with like an appointment for a driver's test at a DMV and there's a huge line? Do you have a procedure for them to get to their driving test at time?
Well, I can tell you we're trying to prioritize these folks, but again, when they're gobbling up appointments just for real IDs, it makes it a little more challenging. So I've got some stats for April here. We issued more than 185,000 real IDs during the month of April. I don't need to tell anyone here that that is by far a record for the state of Illinois. That's over 40,000 more than just the month before. On the first Real ID Saturday, back on March 1st, we processed 3,300 Real IDs. Last Saturday on 4/26, so the Saturday before this one, we did more than 8,800, the most for a Saturday. And last Friday on May 2nd, we processed more than 11,000 Real IDs, a one-day record for our office in one day. And that's because we've been as proactive as we possibly can. But again, most of the folks waiting in line do not need one before Wednesday. The last point, and this is almost a public service announcement. The reason that we're doing this Zoom, this press availability, I am humbly asking and imploring all of you to help us get this message out. You guys have been great. You've been showing up to our press conferences. You've been helping us get the message out, but we are begging the media to help us get this message out to folks that we will continue to issue Real IDs even after May 7th, and to please check the website to make sure that you need a Real ID. So again, you are providing a service by helping us get this message out. We don't want people to suffer. We don't want people to wait in lines when they don't have to. And we want to make sure that those that choose to wait in line have the proper documentation, which again are a federal requirement, not our office. So thank you for making time. I'm sure you'll be hearing from us more today, tomorrow, but we're trying really hard to get this message out, and I'm very grateful to all of you who made time to hop on this call.